guys, so I was actually gonna get on here and film this earlier today, but time did not allow for it. So now it's like 7 o'clock at night and I think I have peanut butter on my shirt from Easton and I'm a big mess, but if I don't do it, I'm never gonna do it. So anyway, I wanted to get on here and talk about my labs and just blood work in general. So I had a blood work drawn, so I had a hormone panel ran from my OBGYN. I do this every now and then just to see where my levels are at via blood draw. Not looking at cortisol, so no saliva testing this time. But I work with a few different doctors, and my doctor that I've worked with in the past for my hormones wanted to see where my labs were. Basically, I need to kind of give you guys like a background on why though. So obviously it was a struggle to get pregnant with Easton. We still don't know why, but we had to go through IVF. There was nothing that showed reason for us not being able to get pregnant. So we were what they call unexplained infertility. But we are thinking about the second baby. So I definitely want another kid, and obviously I'd like to avoid IVF if possible. But I am now 16 and a half months postpartum and I still don't have a period. That's somewhat normal because I am still breastfeeding, so I haven't been overly concerned about it because I am breastfeeding. If I wasn't breastfeeding and I didn't have one, I'd obviously be pretty concerned. But some women just have high prolactin levels that suppresses their cycle, and I figured that was the case with me. Now, from all the research I've done and from my posts on social media, I've talked about how I started night weaning him and I thought my prolactin levels were falling along with my oxytocin, and so I wasn't feeling very good because that can kind of leave you feeling shitty and depressed. Well, I got my blood work back and I'm gonna say I'm pretty shocked at my labs, and this is why it's so important to get labs ran, because as much as you want to assume based off your symptoms one way, like your hormones are doing something, you don't know anything until it's on paper, until you actually test them. A lot of times our assumptions are completely wrong, which is why you don't ever want to do any hormone therapy without knowing for sure, and which is also why like people, you know, they just assume and they want to take supplements and do things for their hormones, but you don't know until you know. So I always recommend getting it like on paper, an actual test, getting your labs ran. So I had them test testosterone, estrogen, progesterone, my prolactin levels, my thyroid, and then the basic levels that go along with those. So anyway, the thing that I'm still like mind boggled by, and I had made a post on Snapchat and had a few of you kind of wondering what was going on, is my prolactin levels came back extremely low. And why this is so crazy to me is because of the amount of milk I produce. The prolactin is a hormone that allows females, or mammals in general, not just female mammals, produce milk. And basically it allows us to feed our offspring. So it rises through pregnancy, and then postpartum when you're lactating and making milk, you have high levels of prolactin. When prolactin drops, that's kind of when people start feeling, it can make some people feel like depressed, and I felt like that was happening to me when I started night weaning Easton, because I figured my prolactin levels were coming down from being high because of the amount of milk I produced. That was all assumption, obviously, because according to these labs, my prolactin is like non-existent, which, not non-existent, but it's low, which is mind-boggling to me. I don't know how in the world I produce the amount of milk I produce if my prolactin is legitimately this low. Obviously some things can throw tests off, whether you're fasted, you just ate, if you're stressed, if you had a strenuous workout, that can all affect things. But at the time these were done, none of that was in play, so I'm really like still confused on why my prolactin is so low, and not so much why it's so low, but more so how I'm producing so much milk if it's this low. Now, low levels of prolactin, there's not really like any side effect, like anything any health concerns with low levels of prolactin. High levels of prolactin, it's called hyperprolactemia, I believe. That's more of a concern for doctors to see. So of course my doctor was like, it's not a big deal, because they don't really care. A lot of just your primary physicians are just going to tell you everything's normal, and that's what I see with a lot of my clients. That's kind of what I'm experiencing with these. With that doctor, I have another doctor that I faxed these to, and we went over it a little bit more in depth, but she pretty much told me I'm breastfeeding and that's the way it is. Didn't really give me any answers, which is fine. I expected that. I'm just glad that I actually requested labs, because I can look at them myself and figure things out for myself. So always be your own advocate and look at your labs. The other things on here that I noticed, and I actually had to bring up to their attention, my progesterone and my estrogen are low. Now, that's normal while breastfeeding, but I was surprised at how low my progesterone is, which is a little concerning to me, because back in 2015, I lost my period, and that was well, when I couldn't get it back, it was because my progesterone was so low, and I had to supplement with a topical progesterone cream to try to jumpstart my cycle. So worst case scenario, I might have to go on progesterone if I can't get my level back up post breastfeeding. And the other things that were ran on here was my FSH, which is your follicle stimulating hormone, basically just testing where that level is at for my follicles, and that came back within normal range if I'm in my mid follicular range, which I don't know where I'm at in my cycle because I don't have a cycle. So that's why this gets confusing. We have no idea where my body's at in its natural cycle, like ovulation versus bleeding versus all that good stuff. So I have no idea. If that's where I'm at in my cycle, then I'm in normal range for my FSH. My LH, which is your luteinizing hormone, that's the hormone that spikes when you ovulate. That came back very low, which again, we don't know where I'm at in my cycle. So if I'm nowhere near ovulation, that could somewhat be normal. But I don't really fall within any range. I'm actually low in general, which breastfeeding can suppress your LH, your luteinizing hormone. So again, breastfeeding is not the best time to be testing your hormones, because you're kind of a moving target. A lot of doctors won't even look at your hormones while you're breastfeeding because it's a big mess. So I just did it because I'm educated, and I had talked to my doctor about having another baby, and I wanted to see where my levels were. Otherwise, most doctors would probably tell you you need to stop breastfeeding before you even try to look at these things, because it's confusing. So along with that, like I said, my progesterone is low, which again, we don't know anything until I stop breastfeeding. My TSH, which is your thyroid stimulating hormone, that came back good and in range, which basically just means my metabolism and my thyroid are working optimally, which I kind of figured with the amount of food I eat. So moral of the story is get your labs done, and unless you're breastfeeding like me, but from here basically all I can do is start to wean Easton and see where my levels are post weaning, and see if I get a normal period again, because the likelihood of me getting pregnant while breastfeeding is pretty low. So just wanted to update you all a little bit about hormones and labs. If you didn't know, now you know.